Welcome back to another episode of the Warehouse Web. For those of you who don't know, I take used books from my local thrift store, scan them in, and upload the scans online for free so anyone can read them. I just wanted to do a quick update video to show you some of the cool things that have happened since we started this series in November 2021. First up, the channel itself now has over 40,000 subscribers. That is wild to me. And it's not only people like you who are subscribed, but also actual libraries like the Library of Congress, which I think is pretty cool. Speaking of libraries, there are now libraries all around the world that are using the books that I scanned to create their digital collections. This library in South Africa is a great example of this, where they took 60 of my scans of public domain books and made them available to their patrons. Another library that's been doing this has actually set up an account and they were able to download the books directly from my scans. And then there are other libraries that have just been inspired by this project and decided to start scanning their own books. I recently had a librarian from Ireland reach out to tell me that they were using my videos as inspiration for their own digital collection. They even went as far as sending me photos of their setup and asking questions about my process, which was kind of surreal because I started this project with the intention of just uploading books to the internet for free and never thought it would inspire other people to do the same thing. But speaking of the internet, there's another cool thing that's happened as a result of this project. A website is a place where people can share and download digital copies of books. Well, one of the founders of the site actually reached out to me because he was looking to expand his site by adding more public domain books to the catalog. Since I've uploaded over 650 books at this point, he asked if he could take my scans and add them to his website, and I said yes. So now when someone goes to archive.org, they can find most of the books that I've scanned available for download. Not only that, but the founder of Archive.org has also added these books to something called the Open Library, which is basically an ongoing project to get digital scans of every book ever published. I think this is really cool because it's yet another way to get these books into the hands of more people. And finally, one of the most gratifying things that happened as a result of this project is that I've gotten messages from people thanking me for making these books available. I got this message from someone who was writing a novel and needed to find a copy of an old etiquette book for research. Or how about this message I got from someone who was looking for a copy of this book called The Boy Who Would Be King, which was written in 1934. I actually had a hard time finding a copy of this book myself, but thankfully my scans were able to fill the gap. These are just a few examples of the many messages I've received since starting this project. And they were always so cool to get because they let me know that what I'm doing is actually making a difference. So that's just a bit of a background as to what has been happening since we started the Warehouse web series. But today we're back at the warehouse, and I am going to show you some of the cool books that I found during my last trip. First up, we have a book about the history of Virginia, which was published in 1883. I chose this book because I was hoping to find a first edition, which would be valuable because Virginia is where I was born and raised. Fortunately, this one wasn't the first edition. But I did find this great inscription on the inside cover that says to Miss Florence, "May she long enjoy this book as I have done. Faithfully yours, Eliza." Next up, we have this book about electricity. This book was published in 1898, so it's over 100 years old. It was donated by someone named Raymond, who was clearly very interested in electricity because they've highlighted several passages throughout the book. There's even a diagram of a simple electric motor in the margins of one of the pages. Then there's this strange little book about how to train dogs. The cover looks like it's from the 1930s, but it was actually published in 1973. What makes this book weird is that it seems to be a compilation of different training techniques from different people, none of which seem to agree with each other. For example, on the first page, the author says to use a firm hand and voice when commanding your dog. But later on, another author says to never use force or violence when training a dog. Moving on, we have a book about wood finishing. This was published in 1924 and was donated by someone with the last name McCoy. If you're re-watching this and you happen to be related to someone with that last name who lived in Ohio, I'd love to hear from you. Next up, we have a book about the construction of railroads in the United States. This book was published in 1884 and has a very interesting introduction that discusses the impact that railroads have had on the development of the United States. It also contains a lot of really interesting diagrams and maps of railroad routes throughout the country. Then there's this book about the theory and practice of music. It was published in 1897 and was donated by the estate of John Hartwell, who was a musician.
Yes.
This book is really interesting because it tries to explain the more theoretical aspects of music, such as harmony and counterpoint. I also found this really interesting book about the law and procedure in criminal trials. It was published in 1904 and was donated by someone with the last name Davis. This book was clearly well loved by its previous owner because the cover is completely worn down and there are notes and highlights throughout the entire book. I also found a copy of The Jungle by Upton Sinclair, which was published in 1906. This book is of the meatpacking industry in Chicago and is one of the reasons why the United States passed laws requiring the inspection of meat products. I also found a copy of The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton, which was published in 1905. This is one of my favorite books by Edith Wharton and was actually assigned reading for my freshman year English class in college. Finally, we have a copy of The Red Badge of Courage by Stephen Crane, which was published in 1895. This is one of my favorite books, and I read it for the first time in high school. Those are just a few of the books I found during my last trip to the warehouse. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode where I'll show you some more of the cool books I found. As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting me.